John Mearsheimer believes that the great powers of the world dominate the international system and they constantly engage in security competition with each other, which sometimes leads to war. Well, joining me now from Chicago is John. And we have Lavrov praising Donald Trump for pointing a finger at NATO. We've had Donald Trump blaming Ukraine for the war in its country. What's your perspective on where we are at and this newfound US-Russia relationship, burgeoning relationship, or rapprochement, if you will?
Well, there's been a fundamental change in American policy going from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. It's truly remarkable the extent to which the Trump administration has abandoned what has been the Biden administration's policy towards both Russia and Ukraine and adopted a radically new approach. And now what you have is a situation where it sounds like the Europeans who talk like the Biden administration are operating on a different planet than the one that the Trump administration is operating on. And where all this leads doesn't appear to be good.
Well, you could argue that the Biden approach wasn't working, that the conflict continues nearly 3 years in, and we were well aware that Donald Trump was anxious to see an end to this war. In fact, he said he could finish it in the first 24 hours of his presidency. Well, that clearly hasn't happened. But his US envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, is in Kyiv today. This is what he said when he arrived in Kyiv. Have a listen.
We understand the need for security guarantees. It was very clear to us the importance of sovereignty of this nation and independence of this nation as well. And and part of my mission is to sit and listen and say, okay, what are your concerns? Where are we at? So we can go back to the United States, talk to President Trump, and with Secretary Rubio and the rest of the team, and just ensure that we get this one right.
That is a very much less bombastic sort of attitude or atmosphere that Keith Kellogg brings to Kyiv from President Trump than that which we've heard from the president himself. Do you think the US can get the Ukrainians on board with these talks, given what we understand to be, at least in principle, Donald Trump's position at this point?
Just to be very clear, Keith Kellogg is not an important player. He's not reflecting what is the policy. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, laid out what is NATO policy in Brussels on February 12th. That's last week. And he made it very clear there's not going to be an American security guarantee. And if there's a security guarantee, it's going to come from the Europeans. And Zelensky himself has said that a security guarantee without the United States is not a meaningful security guarantee. All of this is to say there's going to be no security guarantee for Ukraine. What the Russians want is they want a truly neutral Ukraine. And the only way you get a truly neutral Ukraine is where there is no NATO security guarantee, whether it's with or without the United States. So that's the basic fact of life that the Ukrainians have to face up to. Are they going to be happy about that? Absolutely not. The question is, can the Trump administration get the Ukrainians to accept the deal that they're now in the process of cutting with the Russians?
And that is the question. Do you believe at this point that that is likely?
Well, let me just tell you what I think the deal looks like. I think there are 3 key ingredients in the deal. There are a number of other ingredients, but the 3 key ones are, first of all, the West and Ukraine has to accept the fact that Russia has annexed 4 Ukrainian oblasts plus Crimea. The West and Ukraine have to accept that. That's number one. Number two, Ukraine has to be a genuinely neutral country. There can be no security ties with the West. And number three, Ukraine has to be substantially demilitarized so that it does not have much military capability, because the Russians don't want Ukraine to be a threat to Russia. Those are the three key ingredients, in my opinion, of the deal. And it appears from the body language and the language you hear coming out of Russia and coming out of the Trump administration that we, the United States, have basically agreed on those three parameters. If that's true, then the question is, will the Ukrainians swallow this deal? It's hard for me to believe that it's going to be easy for them to swallow the deal. But the United States has a remarkable amount of coercive leverage, and it may just put the Ukrainians in a situation where they have no choice. But if it does happen that the Ukrainians accept the deal, that's how it will happen.
Yeah, leaving the European leaders, of course, scrambling to deal with what are perceived to be, if not are, frankly, Donald Trump's major foreign policy pivots.